pursue that. But it does come with certain things. You have to know what you're signing up for. And to his point, he talked about wisdom. And wisdom is information, understanding, and then application of all the three in a certain space. So I think it takes information. So when you talk about body image, you would have to ask the person, well, what is it that you want? Why do you want it? Is it traditional? Is it because your family said that everyone has to be in shape and have six packs? Is it not even a body thing, but more so a dress code? For instance, just to share personally, me having dreadlocks. I remember coming out of college and people telling me, oh, well, you can't have long hair or dreadlocks because it's not a sign of success. It seems to be associated with other things. And I asked them, why is that? And who is it that we're looking towards? Are we viewing everyone that's in those lights that may have dreadlocks? So now it comes to redefining what that means and showing a positive image, because if I carry myself a certain way, then whatever I look like will then be translated. And people say, oh, well, people that wear hairstyles like that do such and such, if it seems to be the predominant thing there. So that's how my idea of self-image is more so looking at what do you want in moving forward with conviction. So if you want to be what's considered respected, sometimes that also has a stereotype. And we don't want to fit the stereotype, but it does have a stereotype. And if you choose to go outside of the stereotype and do something different, then your moral values and whatever that is to you has to be what we may consider healthy. And it can change a lot just by having your moral values different. So
I really like this idea of like your body image is an inside out thing. And I think like going along with that, shame is a huge part in this, I think, because I think that's the whole reason we're having this. What Linda was saying earlier is we, as men, typically don't speak up, don't have the space to speak up about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, and I think that's just our bodies in particular are one thing that we really don't speak up about unless you have achieved your perfect body image, and then there's a sense of confidence that comes along with that, right? But if we're not there, then I feel like that is something that we absolutely tend to keep inside. And just like with everything else that we're talking about today, emotional issues, it's important to talk about it, right? And so I think talking about, this is what I think about my body right now, is a really, really important thing to do. Even if you're just feeling fine with where you are, you've got nothing wrong with it, you're just coasting right along. It's important to talk about how you're feeling about yourself physically, mentally, emotionally. Yeah.
So, can you hear me? Okay. So I think there's this unfortunate reality that people treat you differently from how you look. You can look it up. It's like the halo effect. People associate good things with you if your appearance is more attractive. And so I think that's what creates a lot of this pressure to look the part, is because people want to be treated a certain way. They want the benefits of being treated that way. And that's why you see men going out of the way. They're doing steroids in the gym, trying to get this look that everybody's going to treat them well with. They'll do plastic surgery. It goes to those degrees. So like these men talked about, like having the appropriate psychological tools to navigate that internal world is really, really important. And then I think it's also important to add some action to that internal world. You have to, like, having a good exercise program and nutrition program so that you can see some of the results that you want to see. I think that combo together does really good for the body image. If you're eating right and you're doing exercise, you're going to feel good. If you feel good, that's going to have an effect on your thoughts and what you think of yourself. And as you see progress to whatever it is that you want to see, that's going to make you feel better about yourself. So I think in terms of that relationship with your body image, all those things help.
Whew. Well, that was a very diversified answer to that question. Okay, so I guess it kind of leads us to the third question, which is, so what are some early experiences that boys might have in the home or in the community that could manifest when they are men later on as some that would be associated with a negative quality in masculinity or with being a man. And is it possible to unlearn these habits or behaviors? And if so, where can somebody start, to unlearn these negative traits?
I'll take it. So early childhood is where we learn everything about how we interact with the world. Like that is the roots of just our mode of being. And we learn a lot through play. And you can see that in like lots of animals as well, right? Play is a practice for something much more high stakes later on in life. So that's why puppies are trying to bite each other's necks, right? So that they can go out and eat in the future. And that's why kids play. In the past, we've kind of mentioned this in the last question or two of like we have progressed as a society technologically to the point where we don't have to have all these survival skills that we once had. That's what play might have been in the past, but now play is different. Play helps us interact with each other in an emotional way, helps us build societies, because that is the world that we live in now. We are practicing to be with people in this new world that we're in. And so in early childhood, I think a lot of young boys are told, hey, don't play with that, or don't play that way. That's for girls, that's for big kids, that's not for you. And when we're told to play a specific way or not to play with a specific thing, that sticks with us, right? And then as that little piece of information, I can't interact with the world in this way, is in there, it grows, right? Because if one person is telling us that, they're going to keep telling us that as we grow up. And so that just a little piece of don't play that way can grow into some really toxic, harmful traits as we get older. And so if you have kids, let them play the way they want to play is like the easiest thing I can think of in terms of how do we combat that a little bit. Like from personal experience, I have a couple of sisters, and we all four of us played with stereotypically boys' toys, stereotypically girls' toys. We all played with it all. My parents, as long as we weren't fighting, they were happy, right? And so I think I feel pretty good about my interaction with things that are stereotypically feminine, right? So, and to the question of can we unlearn? Yes, we can unlearn anything. I think it takes work, but we can unlearn anything that we have had embedded as a kid. It just takes a lot of work. That was a lot of words. Sorry, guys.
That was great. Yeah, so I think some experiences that a lot of younger men or younger boys experience, things like bullying, being put down, being tested, just being insulted. And if you're a little kid, if you're a young boy, some individuals learn to use violence as a way to protect themselves against it, because if you're getting picked on in school, if you react aggressively or you show that you're not an easy target, that's going to keep people away from bothering you. And so if you learn that as a kid, it might be useful in those social situations. But as you grow up and become an adult, that is not an effective or healthy way to interact with others. So if you use those same mechanisms you learned as a kid, you try going into a bar and somebody insults you and you immediately react with violence, the consequences are you could go to jail, you could accidentally, somebody could die, and then that's a whole set of serious consequences you don't want to deal with. So I think unlearning, relearning, and adapting a different set of values as you transition from those points in your life into adulthood is really, really important. And it may even mean changing your values in your friends groups, because if you're around individuals that don't support that transition and they're putting you down because you're not responding the way that they think is appropriate, that's also going to cause you some issues. So it could mean just you have to replace or change the people that are around you.
Yeah, good answer. I know for me, even when I look at this question, I know I didn't know y'all had the questions behind us, so I look. But I think a personal journey for me is I've been questioning what it means to have negative masculine traits. I look at things as everything makes sense in the context. So we're all talking about childhood. For me, going back to models, you have models as a child, right? You have models. It's parents, it's siblings, it's aunts and uncles, right? You have models, and so the models are showing you different ways and trying to teach you how to be a man, right? So for me, and especially the clients I work with, part of the journey that we do is looking back of why this is happening. Why are you being taught things in a certain way, right? Is this fear that's coming from parents? Is this trying to protect you from something? What's the context of things that's going on, of why you're learning to do things in a certain way, okay? Once you have the understanding of the context, then you can start to differentiate yourself from what's useful now as opposed to what you grew up with. Because, for instance, and I think you kind of mentioned on this as well a little bit on the first question, if we go back a certain number of years, it's not going to be safe for a male to express emotions. It's not safe. It's not safe to do so, right? It's their need to keep their emotions in check, right? That's safety, right? You can't just go off the way you want to go off because of the situation that we're in, right? Let's talk about Jim Crow. Let's put things in context, right? After a while, those parents are going to have children, and then they're going to teach their children certain things, right? But eventually, some of those things aren't going to be as useful, or they have to transform and look different on how it shows up. So we got to get an understanding of why am I being taught the things that I'm being taught, and what things are being useful now, right? Because some places aren't safe for people to have emotions. I work with a lot of vets. When they have combat deployments, it's not safe to be emotional in certain ways. They got to move. They have to check out. They can't just have that emotional part that's running. And so during that time, it makes sense. When they're home with the kids and the wife, they have to check back into it, and that's difficult to do. So there's times that make sense of why certain parts of you are showing up. That doesn't make it necessarily a negative masculine trait. It just was useful at a certain period of time. Now we have to go back and reevaluate that, and how useful is it now? And going back to our definitions of masculinity, it's socially constructed. I think we're all kind of hitting on that. It's socially constructed depending on how you see it and your culture and your viewpoint. So for it to be negative, it has to be in a certain perspective of things.
And I really like everything that everybody put on the table because it opens up more of the conversation. So even from the standpoint to where you talk about something from play to something like relearning to something like safety. And then you talk about something along the lines of negative masculine traits. It goes to just separate when it says masculine traits or negative or positive. Sometimes it's just traits that we have. If you're angry, anyone can get angry. How do we learn to manage anger? If you have some issues with trying new things, and over time that turns into anxiety. Now this goes deeper into parenting styles and birth order and all of these other conversations. But once you go into these places, how much have you had the opportunity to truly experience when you were in your safest, quote unquote, environment? Because sometimes what happens too is, even like for me myself, I come from a very big family. My mother and father had 7 kids together, and 6 boys and 1 girl, with the girl being the youngest. And one thing that I would say is even the way that you learn to take care of your siblings, when you have a bunch of males, then you have 1 sister, you have to be a certain person as far as expectations. Even when I tell people, like, I know y'all took care of her, I know y'all did this for her, and it automatically clicks in that, you're supposed to protect. But am I the brother or am I the parent? It's a different conversation when you go into talking about what is negative that's a masculine trait versus saying, hey, what are some things that we learned that weren't healthy? Once we can separate it, now we can have, it can take away the pressure, because sometimes when we look at negative and positive and then we associate, oh, this is masculine negativity or this is positive masculinity, then what does it do when you feel like you're not matching it? Do you feel like, oh, well, I'm not a man now since I can't hit this mark? Or is it, hey, well, I need to work on my anger management because I never had, or it wasn't common for me to have someone to tell me, hey, you have a safe space. Be upset. It's not the end of the world. But yes, you can be mad. You can cry. You can yell. But you have to, you can yell. I understand why you're yelling. But let's work on calming down a bit. You know, just having a safe space to exercise certain things. And I think that's, to me, that's one of the things that really impacts kids from childhood to adulthood is peer interaction, home interaction, and then they go out into the world and it's different because you're meeting people from a fresh slate. They don't have anything to say, hey, well, oh, that's Johnny over there. He always does that. People don't, and it's not to be harsh, but people don't typically care about other people first. They want to know how they're safe, how they're interacting with others. Sometimes they're worried about, hey, how do I look? And the other person isn't even thinking about them. They're thinking, well, how do I look? You know, so just to say, just so for us to be more self-aware of other people and how things are going, if we can get to that place that it's not always a person's role to do what people expect them to do. You know, sometimes it goes back to childhood there, so.
Thank you. Jamal, if we could keep you in the hot seat, I want to give you a chance to answer the next question first. So the next question is, how can a man stand in his own definition of masculinity in the presence of those who may seek to criticize him? How can we navigate relationships with people who try to impose their definitions of masculinity onto us?
Okay, well, I think that really takes more support than we know.
Sure.
Just me being, I grew up in a multicultural home, for instance. I'm Bahamian and Haitian. I lived in the Bahamas, never been to Haiti, but both of my parents are born in the Bahamas, and they moved to the States, with my mother being Haitian. But I don't speak Creole. So one of the things that I notice is in each culture, it's a different definition. So when I'm in the Bahamas, I'm still Haitian. I'm Bahamian, but I'm Haitian. When I'm in with my Haitian side of the family, I don't speak Creole, so I'm Bahamian. When I'm in America, I'm this, that, and the third. You know, it's all these different things. So just to self-disclose, what I learned to do is stay around supportive people. You need supportive people. It's when you talk about being in the presence of those who criticize you, you're going to be criticized, but everyone who's criticized have a heavy support team. You have to identify your safe places, the people that you're closer to, building relationships. Sometimes it's friend groups. It doesn't matter what stereotype we think of in our head, whether positive or negative, all of them have a support. It doesn't matter if we agree with what they believe in or not. Everyone has a support group. So it takes that. And sometimes you have to really understand or navigate through life as far as saying, well, when we were younger, we were around people just because we were in the same class as them or they lived next door. When you're older, you have to go and find the people that you may feel more supported by. And that's okay. You know, you may say, hey, I want to live up north. Hey, I want to live down south. Hey, I want to move out of the country. I want to live here, there. Whatever it is that you choose, it's learning that now as adults, your parents aren't going to create the safety. You have to create some safety and find people that are safe spaces for you. And it's really a journey. So I'm not saying simple, but it is a journey. And I say it starts with building supports around that. So
I always tell my clients, find a big rock and live under it. And if you never interact with anybody, they can never hurt you. Perfect solution. Please don't do that. I will echo what you were just saying, Jamal, about support. Absolutely super essential in this kind of situation. And another thing I'm thinking is when people approach you with that kind of thing, like it's always a little bit uncomfortable. Like even if you feel you have a pretty thick skin and you're like, this can just wash over my back, that's fine. It's still uncomfortable to be asked the question. And when we're not comfortable, that's a time to be curious, right? And say, interesting, I wonder where that definition of masculinity came from. Maybe not that formally, but ask whoever is asking you, tell me more about that. Why do you think men should be like this, right? Where did that come from for you? And just having that improved understanding between everyone can maybe lead to some better outcomes.
I think they did a really good job of touching on a lot. What I'll add is on an internal level, you really should have a strong conviction in the definition that you came to. And that'll help you deal with that criticism. Like if you're internally validated, it's a lot harder for other people to influence that. And in terms of how to deal with those individuals that are questioning you, you just got to learn to stand up for yourself. You got to learn to stand up for yourself and what you believe in, and don't let people, their ideas of what's right influence what you think is right. So definitely stand up for yourself.
Good comment. So for me, my journey has been challenging beliefs that I have about masculinity. I'll tell you my own story. So I do not like snakes with a passion, right? Passion. So it was a time where I was getting snakes in the garage constantly to a point I thought it was a curse. Like I thought I did something wrong, and I was like, I keep getting these snakes in the garage. So a definition for masculinity that I had was that men are supposed to take care of those things, right? Like when that happens, you go and take care of those things. You don't need to. So, but I don't like snakes. And this is the thing, like, but I'm from Florida too, right? We talked about this. Florida, you a Florida boy, right? Florida boys got a certain connotation behind it, right? Now, if I'm around a bunch of Florida folk and I'm telling them, like, man, I don't do snakes, like, they're going to be like, all right, this guy here, right? There's a belief about it. So I had to start challenging certain things like that for myself, right? Another thing is that men cut their own grass. That's what they do, right? If I told you, what does men do? Men will cut their own grass. And so I would go out there cutting on grass. I'm allergic to grass. I'll be itching and stuff. But that's what I do to be a man, right? I take care of my yard until I had to challenge that and say, no, I could be a man and not cut my own grass. Like, that's a small thing. I can pay someone, and I had to, like, challenge in my mind. I will invest in someone else in order to build their business in order to cut my grass. I had to challenge it for myself so that I could get past the idea of what it means to be a man. So I challenge beliefs that I have about it, and it, like, progresses me. It makes me a better person. Like, I don't have to cut my grass now. I mean, I struggle with it. Like, all right, I'm supposed to be out there, but I'm starting to get past it a little bit. So.
Please do not cut your grass.
Don't. It's way better for the world. Exactly. It's better for the world. It's better for his business, right? I had to transform what I thought about it. I'm contributing.
Yeah, we need to abolish yards for sure. Like.
Abolish yards. I got you.
All right. Well, we can pivot to the next question. Might get a little. I don't know. I feel like we've been getting kind of deep already, but so maybe we can talk about objectification and why some men would contribute to high rates of sexual violence and domestic assault, emotional unavailability, and in what ways can men avoid these harmful behaviors, and what can we do as a society?
So I think those like sexual assault, domestic violence, emotional unavailability, to like figure out exactly what the source is. It's not an easy answer. That's a complicated answer. Those are three different things, and there's a lot that goes into it. One thing I will say is substance abuse has often played a huge role in these decisions that people make. I've talked to a lot of men who have made mistakes when they've been under the influence of drugs or substances, alcohol, and they make these mistakes. And so one of the biggest things men can do is just limit their use of alcohol and substances, because if you're under the influence, you make bad decisions, and then you have to deal with these consequences later. So if you reduce that, I think just in general, a few of these things are gonna go down. And in terms of emotional unavailability, I think that's a hard one for men, because anytime we are vulnerable in society, people tell you, be emotional, let it out. But the moment you do, everybody abandons you. Everybody's like, that's not my problem, that's your problem. You should handle it. Why aren't you handling it? We don't want to hear it. So after that happens so many times, you just learn that it's not safe to do that. So why am I going to do it? And so what ways can you learn to act differently? You got to find the people around you that you can be safe around. You got to find people that can support you. And, one thing I'll speak on for like sexual assault and domestic violence, I think there's a lot of trauma that goes into that, and intergenerational habits that get learned. But in terms of like sexual assault, I think in society, one of the big issues is when you look at social norms and what gets put out there, whether it's in music or in other places, women are treated like sexual objects and there for like the gratification of men. And when that's all when you see that as normal, why would you behave any differently? So you can't expect individuals to behave differently if the biggest influences in their life are telling them that's okay. So it's really re-examining a lot of these aspects of life, and then reworking some of that so that you have more healthy and adaptive behaviors.
Yeah, that's a complex question. I think for me, the biggest part, emotional unavailability, he said this, safe spaces is really important. And when someone really hits you when you're vulnerable, then you remember those things, all right? So like I told you all about the snakes. I told another group about the snakes, and someone came to me and said, I would have never told anyone about those snakes, right? Like just like shame, boom, here comes shame. Like, so communicating what's wrong with you that you would expose yourself in that way, right? And so I remember that, and that happened like 5-6 years ago. But I remember that, right? And even when I'm telling y'all about the snake thing, you saw me hesitate, you saw me like, you know what I'm saying? So you're still working through those type of things. So finding places that's safe, that's really what counseling is. It's a safe space to be an individual, right? Where you're not going to be judged, to get out your emotions, express what you want to say. You got to work that muscle. That's all it is. Working that emotional muscle, trying to say the things. I would talk to people that used to be captains in the military, right? They've done almost 20 plus years, in the military, and them talking about things is really stagnant. Like it's choppy. They're trying to get through it, but they're working through it. They're saying things, they're expressing themselves, they're trying, and a lot of times they're trying because their wives is like, look, you got to do something different, or you got to talk to me better. So they're trying to do those things. So work at it, especially for the emotional unavailability. Work at it, work through it, continue to challenge those beliefs.
And that's powerful. I really see those things, which is a very complex thing, but it's so many different areas when you talk about why. Well, the how, I would say therapy is a good start, but I understand there's some stigmas around therapy that people may avoid going. But one thing that I would say in relation to what we talk about sexual and domestic violence and emotional unavailability, one thing that I try to tell people is, when you're interacting with someone, especially someone that you love, remember that you do love them. So you have to once take away the ego. Ego I think is a big part of it, but it stems from so many places. When you talk about ego and domestic violence and sexual assault, and he alluded to as far as substance abuse, because substance abuse is higher amongst men than it is women. I look at those things, and when I see, like for instance, a domestic violence situation, it's so difficult because you go into the difference between households and single-parent households versus dual family households and healthy households, whatever that may look like. And when you look at the norm or social norms, for instance, being in a relationship to get to the point of domestic violence or hit another person, that breaks boundaries. It goes to so many other areas that you have to jump over to get there. And the question is, do you see those boundaries? Do you see that, well, you can't just hit everyone you're mad at, or you can't be physically aggressive with anyone that doesn't agree with you? You know, how do you deal with not being agreed with or not being told yes to everything? And I think that's a very big part when we go into these situations. And when you talk about emotional unavailability, it goes back to those social norms as well. Of course, in other pieces, but I just want to look at the social norm aspect of it. As far as what is your role as a man, right? It's kind of like if you're the captain of the ship, let's look at what the Titanic, for example, where we just discussed some things that happened with the submarine. What is the captain supposed to act like when the ship is going down? You know, if the captain's running around, is it like, oh, are you gonna be, oh, okay, man, we're good. You know, is it gonna make you more frantic? And it's this role of what are we supposed to do with where we think we're supposed to be. So if you're the captain of the ship and you're supposed to, like he said, take the snake out of the house and cut the grass and do these things and be the protector, how are you supposed to respond? And when is it appropriate? And I think that's a conversation. When is it appropriate to cry? When is it appropriate? Or should that not be a conversation? Should it just you cry and then we talk about it later? How does that work? When is it appropriate to say, you know what, I'm upset? I'm not talking about physical aggressive, but saying, you know what, I just don't like that. Is it a volume level and differentiating factor, you know? And I think when we talk about avoiding them, it does take some information. It takes education. It takes a safe space to really talk about these things, process, whether it's childhood trauma, maybe it's undisclosed things that happen throughout your life, maybe it's sexual abuse here, this, there, so many other aspects of it. I think that takes some unraveling. But I just say start with therapy. Therapy is, if it's something that a kid is going through that you may see early on, I encourage parents, hey, you know, see how it works for them. Of course, the kid has to be willing, because if you're not willing and you're not engaged, then there's not much effectiveness there. It is some, but not as much as it could be. But as an adult, I encourage it, really, really so.
Leo earlier was talking about, I forget the exact thing you said, but talking about decisions, mistakes that people made, and how it decisions is the word I focused on. Like all of these three things listed up there are choices. None of those happen by accident. It was a purposeful choice someone made. And there's a model of therapy, interpersonal therapy, that talks a lot about the games people play, is the phrase they use. And games in this sense is meaning when we do something, we get something out of it. Simple as that. So I say I love you to the people who love me, to get an I love you back, and to get that feeling of acceptance, that feeling of safety. And when people are doing things like what's listed up there, there is a need. They are getting something out of that. As awful as it sounds, there is some need that has been unmet for however many years, unmet by however many other people in their life, that they have come to the conclusion, this is how I have to get this met. Whether that's conscious or not is another matter. But like, they are getting something out of that. So there's a need that needs filled. And so when we're thinking about how do we combat these things, pay really close attention to your needs, right? What do you need as a person? What are you lacking right now? What are you feeling right now? Our feelings tell us what we're lacking. And if we can get those needs met, then we can avoid some of these really awful things that we're talking about right now.
Thank you. Ben, maybe we'll start with you for this next question, if that's okay. So the next question, by the way, I just want to say what a fascinating discussion this has been so far. Thank you all. We're not done by any means, but this has been fantastic. I just appreciate all of you being here and sharing your insights and experience. And anyway, that was a quick little commercial. All right, the next question is, can you identify examples of healthy expressions of anger versus unhealthy expressions of anger? And how can someone begin to change the way they express negative feelings without having uncontrollable outbursts?
Yeah, so when I think about anger, so anger is not a good or bad emotion. It's just, emotions in general are just messages. We all have these messages that come in. Anger typically communicates that something is happening that I don't want to happen, right? It's a message to you that's coming in. The problem is not necessarily the emotion itself, but how we respond when the emotion comes out. So a lot of times, especially for men, anger in and of itself is more of an acceptable emotion to have, right? A lot of times that emotion's coming with friends, right? It might be sadness, it might be feelings of regret or fear could be there as well. But especially for boys, anger is one of the emotions that it's okay for little Ben to be angry and to throw something, right? To express aggression. And that's when it becomes a problem. When not necessarily the emotion itself, but how we're responding when that emotion comes in, how we respond to people or things when we are experiencing anger. So understanding the anger, understanding where it's coming from, what's underneath the anger, those are all healthy ways to process the emotion that you're experiencing. When you recognize that it's anger, that's another part of it too. Where do you experience it in your body that you know that, oh, that's anger and it's communicating something to me? A question I like to work with, once you identify that it is anger, that it's there, sometimes you can get a little bit of information about it, and then, so what do I need? All right? What do I need right now? When anger shows up, what do I need? Sometimes you might need a break. You might need to step away in order to make sure that that anger doesn't turn into aggression, right? And that's a process, right? And it all trails into the same stuff because you've seen other people deal with anger before, and you've had models of how they've handled that anger. And so you have to make a decision, a conscious decision over a period of time to differentiate yourself and do things in a different manner than what typically has been done. So it's a process with anger. Was there a two-part of this question? How can someone begin to change the way they express negative feelings without having uncontrol? I answered that part too. All right, so I'll pass it on.
Well, when we talk about anger and identifying anger, I think it's important to understand the functions of anger. And anger is very much a tool. So when you look at anger typically, it protects us when we're in a vulnerable position, when we're powerless, or even when we have pain. Anger can serve as a distraction from pain, literally. So it's kind of like, have you ever hit your toe or on the side of the chair and you get so upset? When you're upset, it numbs the pain. It's a tool. Or being in a position to where you're hurting. It's someone may have got cheated on. Then they become angry. But anger is considered a secondary emotion, which really the first emotion is sadness or disappointment or something of that nature. And it translates into anger, which the amount of anger can translate to the amount of love or affection or whatever that is equally. So anger is very much a tool. So when we talk about healthy expressions of anger, does it equate? So for instance, let's say a kid is in the house, and let's say if you're a parent, and they spill they're 3 years old, they spill the juice on the table, and you flip the table over, does that equate to the action that this 3-year-old will more than likely drop some juice? Is it even there? Is flipping the table ever a healthy option or acceptable option to expressing anger? And I think that's where we can identify it is. Where's the point that you would want someone to flip a table if you were talking to them or when you made a mistake? Where's the point? If we can get some of that intrapersonal part of the relationship out, when is that point? And if you can't see it, then you can identify that that's probably not a healthy way because it's nowhere in your mindset that you can even view somebody interacting with you that way. So it goes down to really understanding the tool of functionality, and as you stated before, the needs that's being met. For instance, if you think about a baby, do babies get angry? Have you ever seen an angry baby? Do you identify anything they do as anger? It's very hard to really think about, but I call babies master communicators because they really break down the unconscious communication, those body language cues. And even though they don't speak, the adults or whoever's parenting them identifies what's happening and what they need, and they feel the need. So that goes back to needs and functionalities and tools. So I think that in order to identify what is healthy, you have to identify what need is being met. Is it even acceptable? And is this something I can even view a person interacting with me? Is there a scenario to where this would be acceptable?
I think my super simplified answer to the first question is it going to hurt someone else? Is it going to hurt you? If the answer is no to both of those, then you're good. Express your anger that way. And if the answer is yes, then you want to rethink, find something different, a different way, a different outlet. But there are lots. There are so many different ways to express anger that are healthy and good, and that can even be constructive. Like, that's another thing to think about. Another simplification, I guess. Is your anger constructive, or is it deconstructive? Is this building me up or building our relationship up, or is this just tearing things down, right? As much as possible, we want to fall in that constructive boat, right? We want to use this negative feeling for something positive. And I had more of a thought, but it's gone now. So I'll pass it over to Leo.
Yeah, these gentlemen did a really great job of answering this question as well. I think what I would say, I'd want to say the same things they said. One thing I will reemphasize is this concept of moralizing emotions. Like, your anger is there for a reason. So saying it's bad, if I'm ever angry, it's a bad emotion, or if I'm sad, it's bad. Like, this concept of emotions are good or bad, they are functional and they're there to serve a purpose in your life. So it's just about how you manage them when they come out. And another thing I'd want to say is, like, the definition of what healthy is too. In different cultures, it could be seen differently. So an example would be there's a group in Peru. They have an indigenous custom where once a year, individuals who have grievances within the community, they will meet together. The whole community meets together. And if you have a grievance or you're angry at somebody, they put you together and they give you a chance to fight it out. It's just a fist fight amongst the community. They finish it. They hug each other out. And then that's the end of that year. The new year, they all start in peace. So it's a community-based way of resolving their issues and expressing their anger, and that helps the community. And so there's a cultural component in what a healthy expression of anger is. I think in our culture, there's certain lines we try not to cross. So yeah.
I remembered what I was going to say. The other bit, in regards to that second half of how do we control, like, uncontrollable outbursts, it takes presence and it takes mindfulness, which is really, really hard, because I think it's way easier to be just out of touch with what you are feeling, particularly with anger. That's a personal thing for me. It took a long time for me to realize, like, oh, a lot of what I am experiencing is like anger, and I've just been pushing it down for years and years and years. And so getting in touch with that and recognizing, like, this is anger, is a really important step in being able to control it. Because that's why it feels so scary and out of our control, is we don't know it's there until it's too big and too late. It's a presence.
Or what to do with it.
It's like the tip of the iceberg. There's like so much more. But yeah, so this next question will, talk about kind of the cultural aspect of it too. So a lot of men, I know from my dad and a lot of Egyptian men I know, take pride in their ability to not cry or hold back tears or not really be vulnerable, So, because it could be seen as a sign of weakness. So how could holding back that vulnerability or holding back those tears affect your physical body, as well as your mental state, your mental health?
Well, just really looking at when you talk about holding back and talking about emotions as not good or bad but functional, that it can cause a lot of issues, especially with anxiety, or when you talk about high blood pressure, even their health things that can occur as a result of you holding in some of these things. So for instance, just to self-disclose, when I was in high school, I was one of those, I would hold everything. And one day I was just kind of, it felt so normal. I didn't realize that I was holding everything. It was just how I did things. And one day I went to get up and couldn't get up out of the chair. I was just like stuck. And come to find out, I was having an anxiety attack of some sort, to where whatever was built up, my blood pressure was at such a high level. They actually was like, they did the process of overdose on me because they thought that I was on drugs or something. Me personally, I didn't feel stressed. I didn't know what stress was at the time. And I don't even remember what was going on at the time. I just know that it was, for me, just, okay, I'm getting up. I went to get up and couldn't get up. So I started recognizing, when he talked about mindfulness and being grounded, as far as taking a personal inventory, as far as like when I'm noticing that when you're noticing that you're holding these things, really check yourself. We talk about fist clench, posture, all of those things. I didn't have an awareness of what calm was within myself as far as releasing this stress. So it can have a great array of medical things, even so much so as research that shows that when you have different grudges, which we talk about grudges and we say these terms that, it doesn't hurt the person, it hurts you. But there's some research that backs that. Holding grudges and holding these thoughts that whether it's pain or resentments or whatever it may be, actually affects the person medically. So it goes back to being grounded, being mindful, getting information and knowing, whether it's through, we talk about modeling from other people, or you just create your own, whatever that looks like. But you have to have a understanding that holding it in isn't what your body wants to do. Your body is telling you what it needs. So you have to listen to your body to an extent to say, hey, I feel like verbalizing. Well, you may have to verbalize. If you have to say it out loud with no one around, speak whatever it is that's on your mind in that space. If you have to write it, you can write it. If you have to call a friend, call a friend. But it can be so many different health factors that just pushing and putting it down. It's like shaking up a soda can. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, all of our areas of wellness are so intertwined. Like your physical health is connected to your mental health, is connected to your spiritual health, et cetera. The list goes on, right? And like emotions are so interesting because I think that like by nature, they are physical. Like they happen in your minds, but a couple of you guys have mentioned, like I ask people, where are you feeling that in your body right now, right? Because that's how we recognize that our emotions are there, is a physical sensation. And if we don't recognize that physical sensation and don't do anything with it, then it's going to stay there and it's going to manifest itself as a physical symptom. And with enough stress or anger or whatever that we're holding and with enough time, it can like result in some really, really not fun stuff. And so, yeah, like recognizing and doing something with it. It's really important.
So an important concept for myself here is like congruence. When you're not vulnerable, when you're not crying, you're not truly being yourself in a way because you're hiding that aspect of yourself. And I tend to think individuals who aren't living in congruence tend to be less content with themselves, less happy. So an important part of being congruent is that you do have to find a way to share your emotions and let it out in a way that's good for you. And in terms of when it'll affect your relationships in a negative way if you aren't being vulnerable, because the people around you aren't going to know how they're affecting you. So if they say something and it hurts your feelings and you want to cry, but you never express that, every time they come around, if they say it again and they say it again, they're never going to know they're having an impact on you. And so deep down, you're going to be developing a little bit of a resentment just because you held it in. I'm saying like something that hurt your feelings, but it could be anything, right? So if you're not communicating how you feel inside with others, they're never going to know. And so you're setting yourself up to be in an unhealthy relationship for yourself. So, yeah.
Awesome. I don't have anything to add. Ditto.
No, that's totally fair. A lot of good information on that. Okay, so our next question is, the Nashville Public Library is not the primary entity allowing space for these types of conversations like we're having here today. Where are some places, virtual or in person, where men can go to find relief from the pressures of hypermasculinity? What affordable or free resources that you know of are available here in Nashville for men of all ages to improve their overall mental well-being? And I think, Daniel, we'll start with you.
And if I had any off the top of my head to give you, I would. I have a hard time coming up with anything beyond just like your personal support system, right? Your friends, your family. Okay, maybe I do have an answer to this. I guess not an official organization or anything, but when you go and do things that you really like just because you like them, whether that's going bowling, whether that's volunteering, whether that's whatever, you are going to meet people who are in a similar headspace to you. And that is a fantastic place to build community, I think, is go do things you like, build community from there.
So, one place that you could go if you needed help, I think seeking therapy is important, and there's a website called Psychology Today where you can run a search and find individuals that focus on whatever specifically you want help with. So if it's hypermasculinity, issues with masculinity, men's issues, you can find therapists who do have some sort of specialization there, or even if it's just emotional issues. So I think that website's good, psychologytoday.com. You can search on there. The place that I see clients, there's licensed therapists there. There's a lot of interns, and they will see clients on a sliding scale, which means it's income-based. So if you can't afford to see a therapist at full price, you can see them at a reduced rate that's more fair according to your income. And in some locations, they'll even see clients for free. It's called pro bono. They'll do pro bono work. And so seeking out those particular practices that offer those services. And one thing, I just want to add, when you're seeking services, I think at the moment, the majority of psychotherapists happen to be white women in the field, but there are a lot of men from all different backgrounds. Just in my class, we have individuals from Africa, from the USA, from the Middle East, from India, that are bilingual from different countries. So you can really find somebody that you feel comfortable sharing these experiences and seeking support. So Psychology Today, and then again, you could always go to Nashville Center for Trauma and Psychotherapy. They're here in Nashville.
Yeah, so you can find us at Purpose Life. We do a lot of events in the community, and a lot of times we don't charge for those events. A couple months ago, we did a meditation event that we had for 3 months. It was free to the community, come in and practice meditation. We just had a meditative time, which I loved. Also, Black Mental Health Village. They're in the Nashville, Middle Tennessee area. They do a lot of events as well. That's free, open to the public. There's another organization called Men IQ, and all these Men IQ focusing on men. They do a lot of events that's open to the public as well. Both of those brothers that run those organizations do a lot of work. Once you connect in with one organization like Mental Health Village, they will connect you with other people. So that's a way to find free or reduced services in addition to stuff that you see that's here. It's a good start. So.
Well, one thing I recommend too, as we've been digging into it when we talk about hypermasculinity, is even going back into challenging what that is. What is that? Is it because we have to have we have these different struggles which said to be, influenced by social media and et cetera, as far as the imagery of what masculine is. And typically that's what, when you hear someone talk about hypermasculinity, they're talking about the imagery of what's the mold that you have to fit into. And so I joke and I always say, well, first get off social media, and interact with individuals, because I notice a lot of times some of the things that we see on social media, we rarely have ever had a conversation with someone about that topic in person. It's just things that we see that we're like, oh man, that's happening. But when we're out, we don't hear about it or see it as much. It's more just there. But when you get around people or start to be more socially interactive, you get to have more different conversations, and you figure out who it is that you enjoy being around. I found a resource that that I enjoy doing, which is it was a hiking group called Abundant Life Adventure Club, and that was pretty good to where if you don't have anyone to go with, you have a group of people that's like-minded that you can just go and check out. Of course, we do counseling at Melton Wellness. If you go to our website, meltonwellness.com, we have great therapists, men and women, different ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, and anything that you're looking for there. And also I got a chance to experience a organization called Healing Mitts. And what it is, it's a boxing organization, but they use therapeutic principles within the boxing structure. So you can do programs to where they incorporate the therapeutic model with the teaching methods. So they teach you the breathing, meditation, groundedness, even where you're talking about different cognitions and recognizing, where we talked about anger. For instance, when are you supposed to be, when you go into a boxing ring and you're tight, you may be doing more than you need to. And they teach you how to be fluid and to be, use what it is that your body is telling you it needs, not what you think it needs. So yeah, that'll be some of the things that as far as that I experienced throughout Nashville. And I wish I had more resources, but just to kind of talk through it. Yeah. No problem.
Well, dang. Thank you all for this excellent conversation. We do want to open it up for some questions for anybody here that wants to ask any questions to our panels. But we do have a question from somebody that I believe on the live stream. So the question is, what dynamics come to play in a society with no female presidents and a patriarchal religion? Male god without a goddess.
Can you repeat that one more time?
What questions come to play in a society with no female presidents and a patriarchal religion? Male god without a goddess.
I'm wondering if the question is regarding the dynamics of male and female relationships in a society that hasn't voted in a female.
I can clarify. So Peter at counselorpeter.com. But reason I'm asking is, we can't avoid we're going to talk about masculinity, right? I'm a men's therapist. It just occurs to me, we've talked about what are social roles. Part of understanding or defining masculinity, we can't pretend that we don't live in a society where we've had, finally we've had one black president. Finally we have, one female and black vice president. But we can't really discuss masculinity without the elephant in the room that we've never had a female president. And the religion that dominates, especially in Tennessee, is a religion where all the prophets are men, the God is a man.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think it's a relevant question.
Yeah, ask the question again in your word. And I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is we talk a lot about the social environment at the level of as men, your father is a role model, or we talk culturally some of the other things. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on sort of if we talk about the larger culture, how do we define healthy masculinity in a culture where we've historically disempowered women and we don't even have one female president? That's pretty intense.
Absolutely.
When over half of the people are women.
So it sounds like you're talking about a society where the power structure is skewed completely to the side where men are making all the decisions that don't necessarily benefit women. And so I think if you're a man, I think it's also considering that half of society is women. And so creating an environment where they can also thrive. If you believe in equality, then you would want everybody in your society to thrive. So creating a structure where those opportunities are there, where those individuals do have pathways to share in that power within that society, I think that's appropriate. And as a man who respects women, allowing for that sort of equal process to exist.
Can I say a comment on that too? So, and I definitely hear you because the thing.
I guess it gets into like the Frank Parsons thing about like as the father of counseling, like he thought that counselor's role was also like countercultural or like as a role, not just as a profession. So maybe if you want to speak to that too, like whether you see counseling as just like a mental health function or if counselors have a role to like change the culture.
No, absolutely. I think so, and I think it's a personal thing too. Even outside of the profession, they have a role to change society. But to your point though about the culture that we have now, the fibers of it have issues with racism and sexism. The fibers of our democracy, of our states, the fibers of it have issues with racism and sexism and things like that. So the issue is that if I really have to check some of my masculinity, then I know personally that I have biases. I have biases that's going to prefer men in certain situations than women. Like I have biases. So checking those biases consistently is what I have to do to make sure that things are as equitable as possible, right? Because the honest truth is that as things become more equitable, then I have less of a privilege, right? The more equitable things happen, then Ben has to take a seat when his privilege of being a man would have showed up. So I have to be intentional about that mindset of checking my biases, knowing where my privileges are showing up, because that's a very similar thing when it comes to racism. The fibers of our country, meaning you can't get our country without having racism in it, right? So if we want places to have more equality, not equality, but more equitable, then we know that some cultures, some people, right, some sexes will actually have to step back on their privileges. So I get your question. It is a piece that we have to add that in when we have the conversation about masculinity, because part of it is we have privileges, and we want those privileges to get us ahead, and we have to check that mentality that we have. If that answers part of the question that you have, yeah.
Yeah, and I would definitely, looking at that question, I know it's many layers to that question, but I want to start off with when you talked about the concept of as far as the women and having a black president and these different things. I think it goes deeper into a place of when you say, okay, well, we have, whether it's the God or the man disciples, is it a conversation about, okay, well, and I'm trying to get clarity. Is it a conversation that you're asking as far as saying that the world currently has everything leaned towards the male side of things and women don't have a role in it? Or are you asking the question just as far as hypothetically, just to get more clarity from what you're asking there?
I mean, I don't know. There was a comedian once who recently, and I think I don't know if it was like before Obama was elected or not, but he said, I don't know how many presidents there are. It's like something like 47 or 48, and he's like, 47 or something, or white, old white guys.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that one hell of a coincidence?
Right. Right.
You know, and just like, I mean, I read a book that really changed my mind, that really just put this thing in my mind. It was called the Alphabet and the Goddess. It was a neuroscientist
Okay,
You see
okay.
what I'm saying? I mean, like he's throwing down that some things are socially constructed, and I'm saying like, well, like I, as somebody married to a woman,
Right.
I'm realizing like she lives in a world where, what would it be like if I woke up in a world and there were no men present?
Okay, okay, yeah.
Like to me, that's like a big headspace, and I'm like,
Right.
that's got to play. We can't have a conversation about masculinity in Nashville, Tennessee, in 2023, when we just had this anti-drag bill, and all this, without bringing up some of these issues. I mean, that's part of what it means to be a man today, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and I would say to that, when you talk about that flip, I think it ultimately also has to be a conversation as far as what do the women want or what does other people want. For instance, even when we talk about equality, where we talked about the difference between the jobs that people pick, do women actually want those jobs? Because we can't force them just to have this, what we may consider equality. It has to be a question of, oh, do you want to be a engineer? Do you want to be this? Do you want to be that? Why is it heavy over here as far as you need to be this, and that? I think the conversation comes from what do each other ultimately want. Because if it's more so, well, I see this, that goes back into that Chester's ideology of if you see something, you don't understand the function of it, don't break it down. Study it first. Because if it's a fence there, and if the fence was there to keep wolves out, don't just break the fence down. Understand what the fence is there for. And then you can make an intelligent discussion on what does everybody need pertaining to safety. Because if you ask women, and let's say if they say, you know what, we have no interest as a majority, not that some won't, but as a majority of doing X, Y, and Z. Do we say, well, you need to have an interest now because we want, et cetera, et cetera. And they say, well, this is what I want. And I think it goes deeper into that. So if it was, even across cultures, when we look at, we may not speak every language in the world, but some things are universal. We understand that you don't just kill a person. You don't even have to know the language. It's certain things that's universal, understood, we just don't do no matter if we meant, et cetera, et cetera. Now, of course, there are cultural differences and people have scenarios where you may, they have these articles coming out with uncontacted tribes that someone comes out and they end up getting killed. We don't know why, because we're not able to ask them. But what if to them, oh, well, we had stories that passed down and we need to keep our culture safe? I don't know. I don't have any answers to that. And I'm okay with not having an answer. I think that it's just conversations need to be had to. Instead of telling people and choosing for them, ask them. And if they have a choice freely to do that, will they choose what you want them to choose, or will they still choose what they have? And I understand there's some pieces that may influence that as well, but at least ask them first. That's my answer to that.
I'm thinking as far as like the role of the counselor, it's both and, right? Of like we want people to be mentally healthy, because if people aren't mentally healthy, then they can't go out and empower other people. They can't go out and make change on their own, right? And I'm also thinking, I think it was Ben mentioned the Serenity Prayer earlier. What can we control in this situation, right? And I think anyone in this room, if there was a button to hit and make an totally just, equitable society, any of us would do that. But there isn't, and we can't. But we can, on a small scale, work to empower the people that we're working with and empower the communities that we're a part of, I think. And I mean, that's how change happens, right? It's never, well, that's a lie. Sometimes it's a big thing all at once, but most of the time, it's little itty bitty tiny baby things over a long time that add up to something a lot bigger. So.
And let me throw this too. There's a large part of our profession that is connected with culture, right? Even when we talk about DSM and things, I mean, we keep getting the changes of these DSMs. A lot of it is impacted with culture, right? Which in some ways kind of separates what we do from the physical, like a MD. You know, when your leg is broken, it's broken no matter how you look at it. But for us, like, what we would consider is unhealthy has a lot to do with perspective of cultural norms. That's why I really think like we have to continue to evaluate what these norms are, and start to differentiate ourselves of like, all right, we might have context of why that worked or why that was happening then. That doesn't mean it has to continue, but we have to get, as he was saying, have an understanding of what was going on there. We don't have to continue to do those things now. And that is a progression of things. I don't know what the solution is of it, but I know there's definitely a progression of not just relying on how things have been and continuing to grow. And having conversations like this definitely contributes to us growing. You asking questions like that help us in continuing to grow. And then asking questions to the people that make decisions help us grow, right? Because that's another thing. This is a safe environment where we're having these questions, but making sure that we're asking those questions to the people who make decisions help us grow collectively as well. So,
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
Please,
to that
yes,
as well?
sir. Please.
Just to answer, because I noticed I didn't answer as far as the therapist role. One thing as a therapist I try not to do is to take my personal and put it on a person as far as what I personally believe. So what you come in there for is what I want to provide to you. So I want to be more so as I tell any client that I'm working with, I am a tool and a support. I am a resource. I'm not here to move you. But if you're the driver, I'm the GPS, and I'm gonna tell you, hey, well, there's a roadblock up here. You can still get there, but it's gonna take a detour over here. And I give people the options and the choices, let them know, hey, well, you can leave from the airport and you can fly there, or you can drive all the way to the tip of the border and fly from there. You can choose boat, plane, however you want the journey to be. But that's truly up to you. I'm not gonna tell you what to do. And I try to be very purposeful and make sure they're autonomous and they understand their own autonomy so their intrapersonal health can grow from there. And when you talked about the differentiation of the societal part of it, it was a study called Universe 25. I don't know if you heard of it, Universe 25, to which they tried, look at it. It's a very interesting study that they did with, they took a bunch of rats and they made a utopia, per se. No natural predators, food, everything was involved in this study, which it took about 4 years, and eventually everything collapsed to where certain things started happening. Once it got to a point to where some of the rats stopped having kids, some of the rats just say, you know what, they started fighting. Some killed other rats, and it started getting so closed in that tension started to arise. And I was looking at it to look at how long is 4 years for human time, and it's about 160 years in human time of this span. Very interesting study. I just wanted to share that with you. So if you look it up, it's called Universe 25. Yeah.
Thank you. We've got a few questions from folks watching. Thank you for joining us today. The one question is, do you feel that men can truly be free from confines of self-expression by a system that has outlived everyone who came before? Does it exist if we leave it? Anybody that wants to jump in?
So there was two parts of the question. Say the first part one more time, and then I'll do the first part. You do the second part. If we'll tag team this.
Yeah, you can tag team this for sure. Do you feel that men can truly be free from the confines of self-expression by a system that has outlived everyone who came before? Does it exist if we leave it?
Yeah, we have to define what it means to be free from it. We're going to be influenced with the system that we're in. I think it's a continual process. Right, we continually have to look at the system that we're in and start to decide what is healthy for us. I don't see the system overall getting healthier. Overall, I think there's pockets that we see improvement in, and I think we'll always have a battle with that. I don't know what free means for that either. I don't know what it means to be free from that. But there will be a continual process. It's healthy for me to be able to see where I am in the system and how it's impacting me. I feel like I have more control when I have a better understanding of that.
And what was? Go ahead. I just wanted to repeat the question again.
do you feel that men can truly be free from the confines of self-expression by a system that has outlived everyone who came before? Does it exist if we leave it?
To like the second bit of that, I think, I mean, the answer is yes and no, I feel like, right? Because, like, I don't know. I think that our perception is our reality, right? None of us see reality as it is. And when you have a system that you've been living in, whether you like it or not, like that, to some degree, is in your mind as just, this is what reality is, this is the way things are. And if you were to somehow break out of that system, then it could be the case that, yeah, you are a totally free person, whatever that means. Like we just said, we don't know how to define that, but you could be totally free to do whatever the heck you want. And also entirely possible that you just have that stuck in there. And you, I guess kind of like you were just describing with the rats, right? Everything can be absolutely perfect and things still fall back to the way they were. So there was a fun non-answer. It's yes and no.
As typically things are. Could I hear it one more time? Just one more time.
Okay, I'll read it. Maybe it gives a different, fresh perspective on it. I don't even know if this mic works. Okay. Do you feel that men can truly be free from the confines of self-expressed? I think that they might mean self-expression there. So do you feel that men can truly be free from the confines of self-expression by a system that has outlived everyone who came before? Does it exist if we leave it? So does the system exist even if we leave that system, I guess? I'm guessing that's what that question is asking.
So it sounds like on one hand, there's this desire to be human and be free and chase your own motivations and what you want to be. And then you're confined by the systems that's making you got to pay taxes, you got to pay this bill, that bill, this thing. And so in trying to deal with all these needs, it like takes away from you being able to be like the person you want. Is that kind of?
That's the way to look at it, yeah.
And so how do you be free when the system has all these expectations of you and doesn't allow you to focus on these other aspects of your life? And that's, I think, a difficult thing for a lot of people to answer, like myself included. I think what I do is I pull what's useful for me in the system, the aspects that I'm like, okay, I like this aspect of it. This is useful for me and in line with my set of values. It's congruent with what I want for myself. And then I reject the aspects of it that don't help me be the person that I want to be. So you can only do that to some degree, and so there is a level of incongruence, and you have to learn to manage that. At least that's how I've dealt with it, is like those parts that there's nothing you can do about it. You have to pay insurance, you got to do all these things, and that takes away from like your capacity to take care of the things you really want in life. And so it is a difficult thing to do. So can you truly be free? I think it's easier for individuals that are at a certain socioeconomic class because they don't have to deal with the same struggles individuals on the lower classes do.
Yeah, and just to share on that, when you talk about the idea of freedom, I think of that often as far as systemically, but it's interesting as well is that systems indicate a sense of structure. Even in nature, they have a homeostasis, and in homeostasis, the system works to keep itself surviving. Even no matter what you do, like I said, why does it keep coming up? It's kind of like if you're thirsty, and you say, well, okay, I'm just going to ignore my thirst. And then it comes back and say, well, I need something. What is it that's being needed that we may not intellectually understand? Because in that same pocket, if you take water and you put it on the floor, it just becomes the floor. It takes shape of whatever it is. And right now we have the privilege of being able to ask these questions because we're not worried about dangers. For instance, if these buildings weren't here and we just snapped and it was back into whatever Tennessee was, we wouldn't be just sitting here comfortable. There would be no AC. There would be none of the things that we think about. We know we couldn't go to the corner store. Would we want to be alone and systemless in that setting? Or would now we be looking for a group of other people? Just like any movie you see where it's the one person on earth. They start searching, but they search for other people. Why? Why do you need other people? Why don't you just do what you want to do? It becomes so different when we have the privilege of what we have. But if we didn't have what we have, we can go and get us, food from over there. But if it was no food, no place to get it, no water, what will we do then? Will we then say, you know what, I want community, someone has to provide protection, or who's going to be the hunter, who's going to build a house, when is winter coming, how much months do we have, how much houses do we need to build a house for each and every person in the community? And I think sometimes our situation shifts our nature. But if we go back to what it is, some of these questions, we wouldn't want to be by ourselves. That's just my view on it. I don't think we would want to. I think we would search community and start identifying who has character traits that fit what best, just personally.
Yes, we could have some more questions too. So this next question is, we define masculinity. So how do we define hypermasculinity?
You want me to take that? Well, when we talk about masculinity and hypermasculinity, as we talked about before, that's why I said that I think we should challenge the word because we have these different variations, which is toxic masculinity, right? And if it's not toxic, then what does hyper mean? If toxic is given as bad, is hyper necessarily bad or good? I look at it as, me personally, I look at it as more so that media part that we talked about, those social norms, redefining what it looks like. So as we went back to, if we didn't have all of these things, and let's say if one of us was the person that just say, you know what, I'm not afraid of, when we talked about the snakes, and one of us just the snake killer, he just kills the snakes. Is that now?
It's a good example. You just decided,
Yeah.
that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
wanted to bring up snakes. That's
Yeah,
it. All right.
just saying, it doesn't shift it as hyper or not. It's just somebody wants to kill the snake. How do we, and I think that sometimes going into that place, it can cause a level of stress. Because now you're like, oh, you're more masculine than me, or I'm not masculine enough. We're not saying it's bad or good. Now we're saying, oh, enough, like it's a dial. So if I'm masculine 10, that's hyper masculine. So he's saying, well, he's masculine 4. How does that work? I don't even. It doesn't compute to me as if it's not bad, if it's not toxic. How is it? What is it?
I think that's why I asked the question, because we're talking about masculinity, but like you were saying, and I know we had it was a question on there about hypermasculine, so we didn't really clearly define it. We could define masculinity, but what's the dynamic of hypermasculine? And then, like he was saying, like, what is being, if it's something hyper means too much of, so how do you be too much of a man?
I think-
we'll go.
Because I helped write that question actually.
Oh, you want
but I think what we were thinking about with hypermasculinity is kind of like a spaceship going in like hyperdrive. Like sometimes you have to do that, but if you're in hyperdrive all the time, you eventually run out of gas, is the example that we were using. But yeah, so go ahead, Ben, with, yeah.
No, yeah. So you provided some context on but hyper masculinity is a word that has really kind of got thrown out there a lot, though, and I'm really with him as well. Like we have to, in some ways, kind of challenge like what is that, and is that in some ways dehumanizing, right? Are we dehumanizing people by saying they're hyper masculine? You know, what is that? What does that mean? I don't even know if the word came from like a study or something. Maybe that's how they define something as hyper masculine. But that is something to challenge, and because we don't want to turn that into something where we dehumanize folk and say they're extra masculine. What does that mean? What's the opposite of that? And those are good questions.
We've got another question. How can women help support men in removing the shame that men face regarding mental health, therapy, vulnerability, etc.?
So it's your response when we finally reach out. If an individual, if a man in your life is asking for support, don't shame them, treat them with respect and continue showing them the love that you showed before they came to you for support. Because if you have a response that isn't supportive, then they're just not going to want to ever be emotional towards you. You just reinforce that idea that they can't be emotionally available to you. So that response that you have is really, really important. Just make sure you make yourself a place that they will feel comfortable expressing themselves.
Thinking about like if you like have a kid or like a dog or like someone young that you are trying to teach how to do something, when they do it you give them so much praise for that, and because like it's the first time they did it, it's a new experience, like it's something crazy to them, and if they didn't receive a bunch of positive feedback, why do it, right? And obviously please do not treat the men in your life like children, but like please give them adequate, I guess I'm just repeating what you said, but like it's all about feedback, right? Lots of praise, and non-judgmentalness is a word I'm thinking too, like anyone in that situation, if you are being emotionally vulnerable, you need a non-judgmental space to do it. And if it's the first time you're doing something, you need positive feedback for doing it. So that's what I'm thinking.
And with that question, it just put a lot of light bulbs into my head, which when you talk about what role can women play, and it automatically indicates a need, a need there. But I think it's interesting is, can we make it their role, right? Are they supposed to do it? Because, and not to say that they're not, but a lot of, in my experience, I found it actually easy to talk to women about those things. That hasn't been, at least from my experience, my issue has been with men, each other. So I think it should be, how can, we talk with each other in those ways? Because I think women are, even in society, we say, well, women are more nurturing, they're more caring, they're more this, they're more that. So I think it's easier at times talking to women from my experience, but the stigma have been on men not wanting to, or feeling as if it's, they may say soft. Oh, you're being soft, man, you're being mushy, being okay in that space. And I think all it is just, like he said, reaffirming, because if that's what women have been doing, just continue to reaffirm and say, hey, I can have that conversation with you. But it's some studies out there, even when they talk about the prison system, a high percentage of the population in the prison system come from single mother homes, right? And it's not saying, are they not reinforming, or are they not saying, hey, well, you're doing well? Are they not talking about emotions? Or is there something else necessary, needed? Is it a lack of men in the home sometimes those conversations can just hit different places, a lack of fathers in different conversations that may be needed. And that's just where I put my mind into, is that it still takes balance. It takes the homeostasis, it takes the system. And coming from a big family, having a lot of brothers, I can say there's not conversations that we had all the time, you know. But my sister, it wasn't something it just came out, and she's probably 11 years younger than me, but now we can still talk about these things. So I think it's more so of how can we teach the kids that it's okay, because it starts somewhere. You know, it starts with the home. Homes turn into families. Families turn into communities. Communities turn into cities and states, and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. But it starts from one nucleus. So I think that it starts in the home, to where even if women do all they can do, if it's a perfect answer for that, and if that's their role, then we have to have a conversation. Who is responsible? Any women that you talk to? Or is it the people that you're close to that's needed? Because I think we have expectations from people that don't owe us anything. You know, as a society and as a group, we're going to have basic things that we do with each other because we want to make sure that we're cordial. But, you know, expecting something from someone, the same as if I'm a man and something's happening, I have to step in because I'm a man. If you're a woman, do you now have to step in because you're a woman? And it's different if we have no personal relationship. You know, that's just my view on it. But some people may say, if you're a man, you do this. If you're a woman, you're supposed to be that. When impact matters. You know, who tells you what, who you talk to matters, and typically that starts in the home.
So the last question we have here is, do you have any encouraging words for the men or women watching this that may be on the fence about taking necessary steps to seek mental health services?
Yeah, encouraging words. That's the one. That's the one. Encourage, boy, pressure not to get them. I think and I'll just speak for at least my experience, like the men that come in the first time that they're seeing a counselor. The first time when they first walk in is usually the most anxiety-provoking time. It's like you're meeting someone for the first time. After that time, things usually kind of subside. So the first step, from what I've seen and even what I've done, is usually the most difficult. Not even just with the technicalities of things, but the first step is usually the most difficult thing. I tell the people that come towards our practice, this is not a marriage, right? You don't have to stay here, right? You can leave if you want to. You don't have to stay the whole session. I'll tell folk, hey, give me, let's try 5, maybe 8 sessions, and then let's stop. Let's plan for a time for you to exit if you need to. I'm gonna open the window. It's not a marriage, so you can test it out and say, I don't like this in the middle of the session, and you can walk out. So having that open door, that this isn't something you have to commit to, sometimes it's helpful for people to say, I'll test it out. And then that first session hits, and they're like, okay, let's schedule some more. Let's do a little bit more. Okay.
And I just share with that as well, because those things are very important as far as it being your safe space. So that is very important. I think going into the therapy session, like you said, it's your session. Even therapists have therapists. Everyone has an expertise. So if surgeons don't perform surgery on themselves, they also need surgeons. And I kind of take the approach of looking at it from where I'm more like a primary care doctor for you. Everyone has someone they have to check in with. If we're meeting and we don't meet for 3 months, hey, we don't meet for 3 months. Come in when you need me, because I'm a tool. And I tell people they're not broken. It's kind of like having a pair of keys and you don't know what key goes to what. I'm here to help you put everything on the table, see what is what, and then choose what you want. I'm not here to tell you what you're right or wrong or what you're doing in different facets. I'm here for you to show you, hey, you have everything you need. This is called this is called that, this is called that. Now, when you need which tool, go ahead and pick it up. So I think one of the things that should be said, especially when it comes to confidentiality, is nothing that you say is going anywhere else. This isn't, hey, you told me, now the community knows. you're not obligated to tell anyone either. So if you're going to therapy because someone told you need to go to therapy and you weren't ready to go, maybe you don't need to go yet. Because sometimes you get put in a position to where now you're going to tell, oh, well, what do you work on in therapy? Now you feel obligated. Oh, well, you didn't talk about this yet? Or you didn't talk about that yet? It shouldn't be their therapy. It should be your therapy. If you feel like you're being pulled and you can't be open and your therapy is being controlled by another person, you're probably not there yet. You have to decide that you're ready to go. And whatever it is that you talk about in therapy is what you talk about in therapy. Nobody should have the keys to that. That should be like anything that you think in your head is in your head. And when you're ready to speak it, you speak it. So.
Yeah, I'll echo that of like, it is your choice because it doesn't work very well if it is something that someone else is forcing you to do. And if that desire is in there and coming from you and you're just not sure about it, this is going to be a stretch, but we'll come back. This will get there, I promise. I really liked my AP physics class in high school.